what are some of the things that can realistically go wrong when you're in a place like this? I mean, there's always like, it's just wishful thinking that you will not come across a snake somewhere, right? And especially in some of these patches where you just have to make your way through the forest. There's really no trail. You have to orienteer your way through the forest, and you're completely covered by bushes and trees and whatnot. The chances that you are going to have a snake encounter or some sort of a wildlife animal crossing your way is pretty damn high. And that makes me think that I probably should get in touch with like a wildlife specialist or like a zoologist or a snake specialist or something like that, and talk to them about this, talk to them about protocols. Something that happened a while ago was a really profound experience for me. And it was basically this guy that I was training a few years ago at the place that I was working, Elevate Fitness in Mumbai, one of the best places that you can go to train, one of the best team of trainers, team of coaches. So there was this guy, shout out to Johan, and Johan was a pilot, right? And at that time, and the question that I had for him when I was training him was that, how do you as a 20-year-old, is landing like 5 flights in a day? Like, how do people, what do you do about the stress of such a high stakes situation? And the answer that I got was not the answer that I was expecting. Like, I was actually trying to sort of sympathize with the guy or empathize with the guy, but what he said really stuck with me. And he said that it's actually not something that us as pilots have to worry about as much, right? Because what they have is a set of protocols, and when you have protocols, you have a protocol for every single situation that can go wrong. And what you do is you do not compensate later on. You plan for things beforehand, right? You follow protocols, and when you're following protocols, you have a direction in which you can go for every single situation. And that way things are so controlled. You bring so much order into such a chaotic and high stakes situation that you do not really, you would think that it's a situation where pilots are just doing things on the fly, but you're not really worrying about things as much, because you have a set of protocols. And that makes me think that when you're out in a place like this, when you're out in the wildlife, what you need is a set of protocols, right? For every single thing, for encountering wildlife, for having snake encounters, for what do you do if you fall, what do you do if you get hurt, what do you do if you get lost, and things like that. What do you do if you feel hungry? So runners usually have protocols for things like what you're supposed to eat, how you're supposed to tackle your nutrition, what you're supposed to do if you get cramps. But the conversation about what do you do if you have risky, wildlife encounters, snake encounters, yeah, and depending on the place, you might even encounter large wildlife, right? Like, this is a place where I often see bulls and oxen and whatnot, right? So what do you do? And I remember being in a very tricky situation with an oxen a while ago with a couple of my friends. So, and that was pretty scary because we did not really have an idea as to what we were supposed to do. So I'm going to get hold of a wildlife specialist and talk to the guy, and make like a video out of it for everybody. Because usually what I've noticed is that runners never really think about things like this, right? It's just wishful thinking. It's just hoping for the best. But if we have a set of protocols, we will not be left with we already have so many things to worry about when you're out on trails for so many hours, right? And the thing is that as the hours carry on, as the fatigue takes over, as the cortisol and the stress in your body rises, you sort of the rational thinking part of your brain sort of shuts off, and you don't really think about things as much. I remember when I was doing this race in the somewhere in the mountains in South India a few years ago. I was so tired that and I've had a couple of these experiences. One particular time I started hallucinating, right? The trail started seeming endless, and the trees just sort of had this repetitive pattern to them. I was hallucinating in a major way. And this was way back when. And the time before that, I was so tired and I was so ready to give up, but I was going on because I had to finish the race, that the thought of, and this trail was just going alongside this patch of this, alongside this boundary of razor wires, and on the other side was the boundary for some wildlife sanctuary. And the thought of literally climbing and falling over the fence just so that the experience would end crossed my mind. So there's, you could just as well just stop and not do the race, right? You can just as well just you quit. But the thing is that when you get tired and when you do not really have protocols that you should be following, and you're just compensating for things right there and then, problem solving like that, doing things on the fly, that happens, right? Those things happen, and the situation gets very tricky. So if I would have an advice for people that are venturing out on these trails, doing these treks, doing these runs, is that start out with a set of protocols, right? Account for as many variables as you can and prepare for as many situations as you can, and that sets you up for a good experience out on the trails, and that's what responsible behavior is.